somebody is when they are in their strength zone. How many of you heard of Marcus Buckingham? And Marcus Buckingham he talks about strength-based leadership. And it's recognizing that the more we're in our strength zone, the more purposeful we are, the more motivated we are, the more successful we are, the better we are as team members. So my daughter, she was not born with a soccer ball on the end of her foot, but she loves soccer. Ever since she was young, she loved soccer. So what did she do? Not a rhetorical question. What do you think she did? Practiced all the time. Every time she had an opportunity to, she was outside playing with a soccer ball. She watched all the games, especially the Dutch, because we're Dutch. So. She watched the best players, looked at their technique. And as she got older, she would read up on it. She would look for new techniques. She would listen very, very closely to her coach because she was passionate and interested in playing soccer. So her strengths came from her passion and her interest. So if you can imagine, if I had my strengths, because I'm not strong in everything. Trust me, talk to my team and they'll tell you that for sure. But when I'm in my strength zone, when I'm working within my strengths, what kind of impact do you think that has on me and my motivations? Wow, this is a tough crap. Okay, I'm going to turn it back to you guys. What do you, let's pick something. What do you, yeah?
I don't know, a good example would be something happened in your life personally and it brings you down, but because you're doing something that you're passionate about in your work and in your job, it gives you the motivation to push through that and persevere.
Yep.
Whereas if you weren't, it would just be a job, it would seem monotonous and you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's a very good point, is that oftentimes we take things from outside of our lives, or from our outside lives into our work environments and everything else like that. But imagine if work was the place that you loved to go, that you enjoyed going to, that you knew you had contribution. How many of you feel great when you've contributed value? Okay. And where do you contribute the most value? How many of you spend time firefighting all the time? You're doing stuff that you know you shouldn't have to be doing. But the more stuff that you're doing that's within your strength zone, and the more you surround yourself with other people that have strengths where you might have challenges, the less firefighting that needs to occur. I know that I am not an attention to detail person. My office manager certainly knows that I am not an attention to detail person. But she is, and she's very good at it. And sometimes she comes to me and says, give me that. you're not good at that. What would take her 1 hour to do would take me 8 hours to do. And I would be frustrated doing it, and I would waste my day doing it. But she's good at it. So stay within my strength zone, I feel more purposeful, I have more contribution to my business. And when I look at the strengths of the people that are around me, they have more contribution to our business as well. And they're more purposeful, and they're more engaged. Does that make sense? So a person is intrinsically motivated. What does everybody know, or anybody know what intrinsically motivated means?
You do things because it feels right or feels good as opposed to being rewarded.
Yeah, so it feels good for yourself. So it's you're motivated from the inside. It's not outside factors. Extrinsically motivated would be outside factors that motivate you, like compensation or getting a pat on the back or things like that. So when you're in your passion and interests, which is where your strengths typically lie, you're intrinsically motivated. Therefore, compensation is not as big a deal. Getting that raise is not as big a deal as being able to be truly engaged and satisfied in what I do and who I do it with. So that creates a direct alignment then between our competence, our people skills, and our motivations. we're gonna do a bit of it. So in front of you, you have this here. Okay. It's got 9 boxes on it. Looks like this. Okay, the 9-box framework, what the idea is behind the 9-box framework is it helps you to identify with where's the talent within your own team. So we all have, or some of us may have absolute superstars. Some of us may have individuals that it would be better if they were working for a competitor. And all in between. But, so the risk one here, this is where individuals that they have low potential, low performance. There could be a variety of different reasons for that. I had an individual that worked with me when I used to manage at Lobster years ago. And I had an individual that worked with us, he was in another team. And the other manager, the customer service manager, was having a hard time getting him. He wouldn't show up on time, he was a bad performer, wasn't motivated at all. People skill, he always was like creating toxicity within the team and everything else like that. But he was an average performer before, so he was average performer before. So this was going on for about a month. So because I was kind of the unofficial HR manager of our management team, I said, well, let me spend some time coaching and stuff like that. So I sat down with him, I took him out off-site, we went for a coffee and everything else like that, and I talked to him and everything. What I found out was he had lost his father a month prior to this. So that was the trigger. Everything got caught up in probate because they didn't have wills and everything else like that. So he was trying to support his family, and he works in a restaurant, so it's not easy sometimes. And trying to support his mother and everything else like that. And he was going through so much stuff and everything else like that. The manager never realized it. But then the manager also never asked. So I sat down and I talked with him and everything else like that. And at the same time, I gave him a few people that I introduced him to that can help him and help his mother through this time and everything else. He became an absolute rock star. He asked to move over into my team. And the other manager's like, yeah, you go, you can have him type thing, right? He was an absolute rock star for me. Absolute rock star. He would do everything. He had my back in everything because I had his back. Because I found a button for him. There's always opportunity. So going through this, you got, as you go up on the performance scale, on the lower potential side, average performer, solid performer. Solid performer, if our organization was full of, these colors, by the way, represent your A, B, and C players. So an A player is one that drives the business forward, that has high initiative, that comes up with new ideas and everything else like that. But they're not necessarily the best doers. Your high B players are where your best performers are. Because I'm really good at what I do. I love what I do. Get out of my way when I'm doing it. I don't want to lead people. I don't want to manage people. And usually they're not as good as I am, so I'm just going to get frustrated with them. How often do we promote that star player only to find out that they fail? Because they end up doing all of the work because nobody else can do it better for them than they can. So they end up doing all the work and they get frustrated. They're not necessarily leaders, but they're solid performers, and they're so valuable to our organization, right? So the solid performers are great. So if you look going up on the potential scale, the inconsistent player to the potential gem. So the potential gem is probably somebody that has great capability, or is going to be a great performer, but that might be new to our role. This individual might be new to their role. So they may not be solid performers right now, but they've got great potential to be solid performers. They got great potentials to be future leaders of the organization and so on to do is I want to have you just take a couple of minutes, look at your own team, and identify with where they may fit on the scale. So you might have an individual that fits in the star player. You might have one here. The second part to this exercise, which you're going to do at home or at work or whatever, will be to identify with what do you want to do? What's one or two things, action plans, action items, that you want to do to help your individuals move through the grid. So just take a couple of minutes and think through your own team. One thing that I highly suggest is that this is your document and only your document. Nobody else gets to see it. Because even if you have somebody that's in the high potential, one out near the top of the grid, they are still going to think that, why am I not a sub? But the exercise, you can actually take this and you can throw this away after you're done with it. But once you kind of put through your own team into their respective positions on the grid, is you have a second form that's like this. And this is just a simple action plan. What are one or two things that you want to do, whether it be coaching, whether it be, so I put an example here with TK, develop for future leadership role. Need to create a mentoring program. So that person is probably in and around here. Yes.
Would you say, so, for instance, a potential gem would be an individual who's doesn't have the training, isn't as educated or doesn't have the experience or the wisdom, but is extremely motivated, and an individual who's a solid performer would be a person who's very analytical, wants to get in, get the job done, but as soon as, say 4 or 5 o'clock rolls around, they go home and like, that's it. They're not looking to grow, they're not looking to...
That's your high B player. The second one you were talking about, that's your high B player, so a solid performer. Yeah, when they're done work, they're done work.
Yeah.
They have another life, so they're motivated to do really well at what they do. They're very good at what they do. But when they're kind of like Fred Flintstone, when I'm out punching my clock and I'm gone and I stop thinking about work.
Okay.
Right? Whereas a potential gem probably thinks about work a lot. Probably takes it home with them in terms of their thinking and in terms of what can they do better or things like that. So they're highly motivated. They've got great potential. They've got great skill. They've got a great contribution to the team and connection with the team. But they're not there yet. You still need to kind of hold their hand, bring them forward, develop their strengths, develop their skills. And so that young person may not have had the education that you want, but if they're motivated really well, and they listen really well, and they take the coaching really well, rock star. It doesn't matter whether they have the education or not.
Yeah.
I can teach skill set all day long.
Yeah.
Anybody else have an example of team members?
Is it your goal or is it realistic to expect to get most people to the star? Or is it just to get most people into,
That's actually a very good question.
because it doesn't seem realistic to me to expect that everybody's gonna be, I mean, depending on your assessment criteria, to get everybody to be a star. But it's very realistic to get everybody to be in sort of the top 4 quadrant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's a very, very good question, and there's two things around that. One is it realistic to have everybody will all move into that top box? No, it's absolutely not realistic. Is it realistic to help them all elevate and move through the group? Yes. So the second part to that is, do you want them all in that top grid and that star grid? What happens if you had all strong A players, all high achievers, all wanting to try to succeed, all wanting to drive their own ideas into the business and everything else that? What happens?
Very lively discussion.
Very lively discussion. People stepping on top of other people. It creates a very toxic organization if you have all A players. Well, yeah, but if you have, so,
If you got an A player in human resources, you need an A player in finance.
yeah,
You know,
but if you had everybody in HR and everybody in finance, and, you know, so you definitely want to have an A player that's leading those, or that's even, you want to have some A players within those teams as well. But if they were all, then everybody should be trying to step on top of everybody else. And additionally, excuse my language, but shit's not gonna get done. They're all great around driving ideas and driving and trying to create new initiatives, and they're thinking about the business and the performance and everything else that, and they're high achievers, but they're not necessarily the best stewards. They're the individual that this gentleman was talking about, that wants to come into work, wants to do a really good job. They're very good at what they do, but at the end of the day, they shut it off and they go home. But they are great at what they do. So you don't want everybody up in that. So it's a very good question. Thank you. So I wanted to shift gears to, so basically, if you apply these three objectives that we started off with today, I can almost guarantee you that you will drive better strength in your business with your teams and for the benefit of your business as well. So the collaborative performance development. How many of you do performance consistently? Performance management. How many of you do performance reviews? Yes? Yes, yes. So, okay, probably about a third of you, a quarter of you. So, for those of you that don't, why is it? And normally I would have a chart or a thing that we can write down, except I don't like copying it, so.
It's hard to define what success looks like.
Okay,
So
yeah.
it's hard to find a metric on how you're evaluating performance because people are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else?
It's a tier 2 task, so it's something that doesn't seem important and you're urgent because you're opting out. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just something that can get pushed on the back burner
Right,
in
yeah.
front of the fires.
What about time? It's like, oh, performance review time's coming up. I'm gonna have to do that to 10 people. I gotta think through it, and then I gotta have meetings with them, and I gotta set their goals. I gotta do that with 10. Then I gotta make sure that they do it with their 10. You know, and it becomes a chore, and it's not a tier 2. It's not, it gets crowded out by the urgent, you know, because all of us have urgent, right? How many of us have to-do lists that every time we knock something off the to-do list, 2 things go on, right? real barriers. What's the other another main barrier to this?
Just don't like doing it.
Don't like doing it, and they don't like it. Manager, no, both. Manager looks at it as it's gonna end up being a confrontational conversation. And the employees look at it as, I'm gonna get shit on. Sorry, actually, I'm not teaching. Sorry about that. I'm from a small town, so. But the employees don't like it. But what do almost all employees say? And what do you guys say in terms of, do you want to know feedback? Do you want to know how you're doing? So does almost everybody. They just don't like the way we do it, or the perception of the way we're gonna do it. So I'm hoping that I can help you make it an easy button, make it so that it's an experience that both the manager and the employee enjoy, and more importantly, make it so that it's not a static point in time. How many of you that do performance reviews, do a performance review, and then you come back to it a year later?
What do you mean?
Review the
Like,
one.
hey,
You do a performance review, say this is how you're doing,
$500.
and then this is what you need to do next, over the next year and everything else like that. I'll see you in a year. How is that going to drive performance? How is that going to drive development?
Well, that's one of the ways that people don't like.
Yeah.
It's not consistent, it's not ongoing, things happen in their performance throughout the year that it's really difficult for you to pinpoint those things when you sit down and try to remember a year from now.
Right.
So they want, feedback.
Yeah. And there is actually evidence to support that organizations' performance levels go up 3 weeks prior to performance review time. And, but that's also what the manager oftentimes just remembers, is that when they think about your performance and they're sitting down at the end of the year to do a performance review with you, are they thinking about the stuff that you did in January? No, they're thinking about the last, the amazing thing you just finished up doing, or the crappy thing that you just finished up screwing up, right? Like they're thinking about what's happened within the moment, because that's just the way things work, right? So whatever is happening at the time is how it is going to impact your performance review process, especially if it's a subjective versus objective approach to performance. So subjective is that it's subjective to my opinion, essentially. So if you look at the traditional performance appraisal, it's subjective. So the traditional performance appraisal is, I've got your list of responsibilities, and on that list of responsibilities, I go, you did a 3 out of 5 on that, you did a 2 out of 5 on that, you were 5 out of 5 on that, okay? But there is no objectivity to how you're measuring your performance. So it is all up to the winds of what I thought of you that day, or that week, or that month. It is also very much about the past. It's about past performance, whether you did a good job or whether you didn't. But it doesn't drive performance going forward. Performance management is adding objective goals, but it measures past performance objectively. So in a performance management system, it's more about setting goals and how well did they achieve those goals. So now it's more objective, which is good, because now you've got tactile, did you do it? Did it come out well? Or it's got what's called KPIs, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but it's measurable things that you can say, okay, there's evidence in behind how I'm rating your performance. But it's still focused on the past. Our approach to it is we call it a performance development process. And we're gonna talk more about the process in a little bit. For now, we're gonna talk about just the performance development itself. So, performance development process, which is what we're gonna go through today, it measures present performance objectively, and it continues to drive the future performance, and one of the key words to this is collaboratively. So, we're gonna explain all of that over the next 45 minutes. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, how many of you know the difference between management and leadership? Okay, what would be the differences, do you think?
Leadership is just being able to give a vision and cast to inspire and energize a team, whereas management is to basically make sure they're hitting their goals and not screwing up. It's risk management versus potential opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Principally.
Well, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, management points to an individual who's inspecting or evaluating or judging an individual, whereas a leader is a person who inspires their team and where people are not afraid of that individual. They're not feel like they're underneath a microscope.
Okay. So we manage things, we manage processes, we manage financials, we manage equipment, we manage schedules. Management is a process. There's skill sets that we need to have. That's our management hat. Or we manage the environment around our employees. Leadership is inspirational. It's visionary. It's engaging people towards the direction that you want to take them. Leadership is the behavioral aspects of how we bring people towards. I can have all the structures in the world, but if I can't lead people into those structures, then those structures are useless. The structure is where management comes into play. The leadership is how you get those structures to be put into play in an effective way with a team that values it and values you. So, in the PDP process and the performance development process, there is aspects of management and there is aspects of leadership. Understanding that they're two separate categories, but they merge together in the performance development process. And it's one of the key things, if we do it right, it's one of the key things to really drive our business forward and really hit stride. So with management, we have templates and forms. If you don't have some type of form that is bringing their goals to the table, then you can set all the goals in the world that you want, but if you just kind of did that in a good conversation or over a coffee or something like that, and there's nothing tactile that comes forward with it, then it's just going to get forgotten. It's SMART goals, process of measuring, process of reviewing and rewarding. All of those are process, all of those are managed, but they're important, but they're not going to drive performance, are they? That's what's going to drive performance. That's what's going to drive people developing. That's what's going to drive people moving through that grid. It's our ability, it's collaborating with the employee to establish goals. So instead of just saying, here's what I expect from you over the next year, it's ask them. What do you want to work on? What do you want to drive forward? What kind of development opportunities do you want to have? I still have my ideas as the manager, but now we come together with them. What's one of the reasons for that?
So they have a say.
So they have a say, they'll have a lot better buy-in, because they'll own them, because they were part of contributing to them. Having great conversations. You will see collaboration and conversations constantly throughout the rest of this. Having great conversations that are focused is what engages the partnership between the two of you. Regular coaching, guiding, and supporting, providing authentic recognition. Saying, good job is one thing. Saying, I really think you did a spectacular job on that presentation today, and I know none of you are going to say that, but you know, being specific, being authentic about giving recognition. You know, and keeping goals and progress top of mind. That's all leadership aspects of it. And then leadership aspects of it is what makes performance management a living thing. So, we've provided you with a small toolkit. Whether you have a performance system in place or not, or whether you have one that you prefer using over this one, that's fine. But what we did was we put together this here, which is basically three main documents. One is the first one we're going to talk about a little bit is the Performance Development Planning Guide, which essentially explains this one page thing. How many of you that do performance management right now, how long are they usually?
30 minutes.
30 minutes? How long are they in terms of this? Are they one page?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Oftentimes they get too complicated, too complex, and everything else like that. Keep it simple. The simpler you keep it, the more apt it will be that it will get delivered upon. So we have this here as well, which is how we do performance development. It's not necessarily how you guys are going to do it, but if you want a tool that's ready-made, we'll send it as a soft copy to you. You guys can use it all you want. The third aspect is, the third one is the performance development process checklist. This is almost like a step-by-step guide to how to really take performance development into your organization in a relatively easy way. Hopefully, you find it. What I also included was just a list, because KPIs, how many of you have heard of KPIs? KPIs, what they are, they're called key performance indicators. We use KPIs a lot in our business, but we don't use them oftentimes formally. So, year-over-year profitability, as an example, is a KPI. It's something that we measure, that we can measure very objectively. And that will allow us to measure how well we're doing. We can do that organizationally, and oftentimes we do that organizationally by measuring our financial results, our year-over-year sales growth, our profitability, things like that. So they are all kind of organizational KPIs. But it can drill right down into individuals, which I'm going to show you an example of that in a second. So what I did was I just provided you with this front and back list of KPIs, because oftentimes the hardest part about establishing measurable performance is, what do I measure? Key things around what do I measure is, do they have a direct impact on what you're measuring for performance of, right? So for instance, measuring your accounting supervisor on year-over-year sales growth, even though it's a financial thing, they don't have a direct impact on that. They do have a direct impact on what would be called days sales outstanding, which is how long your accounts receivable are sitting in there without being collected. So they have a direct impact on that, but they don't have a direct impact. So identifying with so these are just ideas around what you could potentially use in different areas, in different departments, and different types of organizations. Yes?
So I have an employee that is a great executor, incredibly technically competent, is terrible at personal skills, and it's hard to put that tangibly, and especially in the KPIs. Like, how do you formulate and try and structure up or measure? Like, in reality, I just want him to enjoy his job, and it comes
Right.
across as not, and it breeds everything to everybody around him and affects the team. So I'm just trying to understand how do you track with that, and how do you navigate that soft or qualified or character, right?
That's difficult.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be something that I would put into as their KPIs. Their KPIs would be the 3 or 4 things that, if I measured those 3 or 4 things, so instead of me managing 20 different responsibilities that the individual has, if I know the 3 or 4 key things that if they deliver to those performance measures, they are being successful in most of those 20 things. So I now don't need to manage them in those 20 different responsibilities. I'm managing them to the performance. The issue around potential toxicity or how they're impacting the rest of the team and everything else like that, that's a ongoing coaching thing. That's having a conversation with them, and I can talk to you offline about that. It's how do you approach them and how do you help them. That's more of a one-on-one coaching, for sure.
Yeah.
And you're not going to drive that by performance measures. You're going to drive that through conversations and helping them either to identify with why do they seem dissatisfied, or helping them to. So, as an example, you'll have somebody that is really, really great at their job and everything else like that. And so you think of an organization like Manulife or something like that where they're very big, right? And they want to reward the individuals that are high performers and everything else like that. I know if I put them into a leadership role, it's not going to be good for anybody, right? So you make them a technical manager. Or they're not leading people, or where they may not be working right directly within the team or anything like that, but they are a great resource to the rest of the team from a technical competence perspective. So they still get a promotion, they still get recognized for their value and everything else like that, but you're not putting around pegging into a square hole. So I would look at it as a development opportunity for them, which you can actually put into here, which is the third level of this process. And then I would really spend time to engage the individual with how they work within the sandbox. So and that would be more of a behavioral thing than it would be a measurable thing. Yes.
I'm just clarifying, so KPIs are more based around being able to bring an individual's performance down to say like almost like a dollar value number, so more around like finance?
It's not necessarily around dollar value. HR, as an example, might be employee retention, percentage of employees retained, right? So we have an employee retention of 85%. That would be then this benchmark that you set for the HR team, right? As an example. Or it might be a number of widgets going through on a manufacturing line. What's our tack time? Tack time is the average amount of time that it takes a part to go from full raw material through to finished good.
So I guess maybe the benchmarks that you set would have to do with a potential goal in mind that you have financially. So for instance, if you know that you want 100 pieces going through per hour and you're only at 75 and that 100 pieces is actually based on your goals financially, or you want 85% retention because it costs so much each time you hire an employee.
It rolls up eventually to financial.
Right.
Yes, so, and we don't get a lot into, we have an actual whole part, like a whole 5-hour part of our program on KPIs and setting SMART goals and everything like that. But essentially, the best way to do it is having what's called cascading goals, cascading KPIs. So what that means is that we have our key performance indicators that measure the success of our business as a whole, and that's important to us in terms of driving our business as a whole. And then that then cascades down into each department. What are the key performance indicators that will identify with how well they're performing as that department that align towards those organizational goals? So if you think from a sales team perspective, because that's usually the easiest way to look at it, is that overall we want to increase our year-over-year sales by 20%. That then rolls down into the sales department, and the marketing department has an impact, and there's a couple other departments that may have an impact on achieving that 20% increase. So in the sales department, it might be we want to increase the number of new clients that we have by 30%. We want to increase the retention of our current clients from a retention of 80% to a retention of 90% of current clients. So we're now, and we want to increase our pricing by 10%. So those three things are going to all impact our overall 20% sales growth. That rolls down then into our sales team, and Sue has her goals around new client acquisition, around customer retention, client retention, and so on and so forth. So it's essentially, if you look at the overall structure of a KPIs structure, it would cascade effect from organizational through to departmental, through to individual team members. But the individual team members now know exactly what they're being measured on and how well they're performing to it and everything else like that, and they know what they're being managed to as well. So, that,
Thank you.
yeah. So, in our particular one, which is the one page that's in front of you, and you, again, you may have your own performance review process and everything else like that. Use what you already have. You can take parts of this if you'd like. We're setting it out in a Word version, so you guys are free to use it and apply it into your business as much or your organization as you want. So we measure in 3 different aspects. We measure in KPIs, because it's a very objective way of being able to measure. We measure stretch goals, which is essentially setting smart goals that help them to stretch how the organization or how the department is evolving as an organization and applying their talents to that, which is an interesting approach. And then a development goal. What are they doing, or what are we collaboratively doing to help them develop, grow professionally? So how do we help them be better at their jobs? How do we help them become really proficient? How do we help them get ready for the next level? So those are the 3 components we have in it. So we're going to talk about KPIs briefly. We talked about it here, but we're going to talk about it solely from kind of using KPIs with our organization, with our team members. Okay. So KPIs should remain relatively the same year over year. So oftentimes the difficulty of establishing something like this is identifying with it's going, it's too complex or too hard or anything else like that. But let's say I've identified with those sales team as an example that your KPIs as individuals is that new client acquisition percentage, is the percentage of current client retention, and is customer satisfaction levels. Let's say those are the 3. Okay? Year over year, they stay the same for the most part. Once you've identified them, they're static. They might change if the job changes. So once you've identified once you've identified, so okay, where do I get the numbers from? Oh well, I can get the numbers from our CRM system, or I can get our numbers from whatever. It's once you've identified with what I'm going to measure and where am I going to get the numbers from, it becomes really easy. I can go in less than 5 minutes, and actually if you have a good office system, like or ERP system, or even QuickBooks, oftentimes will give you almost all of the results that you need. You can just set them up that they send out the reports to you that has the information you need. It'll take you 5 minutes to fill out everybody's targets and actuals and everything else like that. So then it just becomes year over year is just setting the target itself. So we already defined what it is that we're going to measure. That's going to stay the same. Now it's just identifying with, okay, you did this last year. How about we move it 10% higher? Is that a good, and you talk about collaboratively, what does that new number look like? Easy. So you collaboratively set targets with the individual, measure the actual results regularly and compare it to target. So it's basically you set targets, and I almost insist, and you'll see why, that you go monthly. Oftentimes we try to do it quarterly because people don't want to have to take the time. I'm going to try and make it so that it looks so easy for you that you'll want to do it monthly. So the actuals is basically, so if my target was $50,000 and new sales for this month, and I hit $45,000, I didn't quite hit my target. Sharing results, including KPI progress, and your monthly performance coaching sessions, which is what we're going to get to later. So it's not just about this becoming something that sits on the back shelf for a year and then comes back at the end. So here's an example. So I own 2 hair salons that I bought for investment purposes. I don't want to be managing them every day because I have another business to manage every day. But the whole idea behind both my businesses, both the hair salons as well as Future Focus, is that none of them need me. Is that I've got far better people than I am to do things that they can do better than I can. And they're engaged towards the direction of the organization. So I run 2 hair salons. Well, I don't run them. I have great sales leaders that run, or great salon leaders that run them. But I can see all of the metrics. I have great metrics from because it was Regis, or bought them from Regis Corporation. And Regis is big and huge, and they have all of these great reports and tools and everything else like that. So I literally, over coffee in my morning, I can see our daily results. I know exactly what happened in both my salons, down to individual performance, down to day sales, number of guests, number of product sales, percentage of discounts that were given that day, everything else like that. And in 5 minutes, I can tell you exactly what happened, right down to individual level, in one report. But I taught my salon leaders, because they've gone through our leadership program, how to be really great business leaders, and how to be really great coaches, and how to sit down with their employees and set goals with them, with the stylists. So here's an example of a stylist using KPIs. So as a stylist, production per hour is very important to us. So that basically means the total number of total service sales to total number of hours within the month. So, and our target, if they hit $45 per hour, and that's basically behind the chair. So it's not including product sales or anything else like that, that's behind the chair. So if they hit $45 on average, their average hour for every hour that they're working, then that's a good number, that's a really good number, okay? This individual hit 40, 42, and 55, month to month to month. So I'll tell you, this individual is a new individual. So they're just, and you'll see that through the rest of the examples that we get, okay? So so this is that hidden gem, or that potential gem. They're relatively new to the organization, they're driven, they are continuing to drive and achieve, and they want to achieve, and they want to please their salon manager, and everything else like that. So you can see this going upward, right? Trending upward. And the second one that we measure is total product sales. So we want them to upsell. We want them to sell hair care products. So when they're doing the shampoo and the scalp massage and everything else like that, they're talking about the product that they're using. So that, and you said, oh, when we were doing the consult, you were asking, you wanted more volume and everything else like that. Well, the reason why I'm using this product in your hair is because it'll add more volume into it. So at the end, they're going to get more product sales because you've now educated your, okay? So product sales is the next one. So I want to see that the year's target is $25,000. I want that individual to achieve $25,000. And says, this person came from a retail background. So right off that, and you can do this, you don't have to do this, but you can do this, is you can break it down by seasonal, right? So for instance, our high point is in and around Christmas, coming into Christmas, and December and everything else like that, and then go back down to January as an example. So you can kind of adjust it each month. This person knocked it out of the park right from the start because they have a great retail background. So they're used to selling products. They're used to saying the right things and engaging the customer and everything else like that. So she's already knocking it out of the park. The guest satisfaction scores is also very important because we want to make sure that our guests are coming back, right? So this is not, so when you're talking about financial, this is not a financial result, but it's a key contributor from that individual's role, right? When you're in my chair, are you going to have that great salon experience? Now, her measures here, so the target is 8.3 out of 10 on average, but her target, she's hitting 7.5, 7.7, 7.8. She's just learning. She's new out of hairdressing school. She's just learning. She's learning how to do that salon experience and everything else like that. So does that make sense in terms of, does it help to kind of see it from a, the guest satisfaction? Oh, we have guest satisfaction scores. So when well, it's optional, but yeah. So, yes.
So you'll have a bunch of surveys, for instance, that they fill out, and then you'll know roughly, because those individuals sign in when they come in, who has come back and who hasn't based on specific scores, and you set an average?
Yeah, so individuals, so it's rated online,
Yeah.
and and individuals that serve that client are automatically tied to that client. So all of the scores that were put in by their clients are directly associated to them as individuals, as performers. So does it make more sense when you kind of see the example? Okay, so any questions around KPIs? Do you see the value of using them as a measuring tool or as a performance development tool? They don't have to be that difficult. I'll even have a phone call with you if you want to ask me ideas around what should I be measuring, and I'll give you some ideas. Yes, yeah.
I was just saying, it just seems difficult. I guess you'd have to use a lot of data over time. It seems difficult to be able to find your benchmarks. So like, to not set that benchmark too high for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to make it so that it's achievable,
Yeah.
but it's a stretch. You don't want to just set the same targets year over year, because you don't want, you want to stretch your organization, you want to grow your organization, you want to grow, and if you're not for profit, you want to grow the impact that we have on our community.
So,
Yes.
an example in that,
But don't make it overly, because then it becomes demotivating. So,
that was specifically a goal-setting KPI plan for someone who's
the example that, yeah.
So we want to say a year under your belt, those numbers and.
Yeah, and that's sometimes, and that goes back to your question, it relates as well, is that at first, you may not know what the target is. You may not know what the benchmark is, because you haven't measured it before, you haven't tracked it before. So don't set a target. Just say, this is what we want to measure, and just start measuring it. And when you're having your monthly coaching sessions with the individual, talk to them about where that's going and everything else. What you do is you then establish a baseline that you can then set targets to. So if you haven't measured it yet, and there's no way of getting that data, that past data, then just start measuring it. So like for instance, guest satisfaction scores. If you don't do a customer service survey or anything else like that, you might want to start. We have no data to start with. So you start tracking it, and you start measuring it, and you can even say this is a key performance indicator that I want for you as an individual. But we have no baseline yet, so we're not going to set targets to it. We're going to just start to measure it, and we'll talk about how do we massage that. So, and once you start measuring it, you're oftentimes surprised to go, wow, we could do so much better. We never even thought about measuring this. Now that we are measuring it, we can take our guest satisfaction scores from 6.5 to 8, easy. Back at Red Lobster, we did that actually, where we were the second worst store in Canada for overall guest satisfaction, and we measure 12 different things on guest satisfaction surveys and stuff like that, but the overall guest satisfaction was the target that we always measure. One of the things is on Friday and Saturday night, which we would do 2/3 of our business in those 2 days, because we were in standing line. Well, our hosts used to quote, "Well, it'll take, the wait is about 15 minutes," but now they wait for an hour. It doesn't matter how good we did in the rest of that experience. They went into the restaurant upset. So we solved for that one issue. We went in 3 months, and I wasn't the one to solve it. It was one of my hostesses that came up with the idea of doing a time study to see what our table turns are and everything else like that. So I said, okay, well, I'm gonna let you lead that, and I coached her and everything else like that. And so we went in 3 months, in 1 quarter, we went from being the second last store in overall guest satisfaction to the second highest store in a 3-month period, to the point where I had my regional manager, my district manager come to our store just to find out what the hell happened. So they come in the back door, because that's where everybody comes in. And so I took them up front and I said, Teresa, can you tell them about what you did with the time study and everything, and how that impacted and everything. That's the other thing, is always give credit where credit is due. But when we started to measure and we started to identify with what specifically was it that was getting in the way, we can create great solutions. So there's a really good value to the KPIs. Sorry, I digress, and I've got limited amount of time. So goal setting.
Did you tell them that it was gonna be an hour late?
Oh, no, you mean in the restaurant?
Yeah.
Oh, with the DM and the RM?
Yeah, did
Yeah.
you tell them, hey, it's gonna be an hour late, they just turn around and go somewhere else?
Yeah, like, sometimes you wish that your district manager or regional manager would go somewhere else. Around goal setting, so the second part to that form is stretch goals. Recognize again, highlighted, collaboratively. How often of us that set goals for our employees, how often do we set goals for our employees? This is what I want you to achieve. So you'll see as part of the checklist, there's a preparation time, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But it's essentially start asking them questions 2 weeks beforehand. What particular talents or skill sets do you have that can be applied to improving our organization or our department or our team? How do you want to apply your talents into what we do? So you think about somebody that's really good with Excel spreadsheets, right? And we know that we have a real mess when it comes to managing our whatever. But an Excel spreadsheet, an Excel model would make it so much easier. They're really great with Excel. Can you help us build that model so it makes us more efficient as a team? Let them use their skill sets. Let them identify with, this is my talents. And this is how, and because when you go back to the original conversation we were having, people love to work in their strength zones. Their talents are directly tied to their interests and their passions and their strengths. So tap into it. What gets in the way of our success in department and the department or organization? So ask them. How many times, I used to work in a manufacturing company, I used to be the operations manager in a manufacturing company, and it was interesting because you'd hear the mick-micking, we called it mick-micking in the lunchroom. They would be sitting there going, I don't know why they keep doing this, and they keep doing this, and it's always wrong, and everything else like that. If they did it this way, or if they did this, or if they did this. But do they actually talk to the manager about that? Do they actually tell the manager, hey, if we did things differently, if we did it this way, it would improve our throughput, or it would improve our quality, or it would improve whatever? No, they don't, because we don't ask them. Well, ask them. They're the ones that know better than you do. So what gets in the way of our success? Ask them, what ideas and possible solutions do you have about what we can do better? And ask them, what projects or initiatives do you think would be helpful over the year? That if we applied these things in. 2 weeks from now, we're going to have our conversation. Come with just bullet point ideas, just bullet point. Of some things that you think of that you'd like to work on over the coming year. Answering these questions. I'm going to do the same. I've done this for years. When we hire in the executive search process, one of the things that we used to do that was different than all other search firms was that we used to coach the relationship for the first 6 months. And one of the things we would do is we would help set collaborative goals. So I would ask the hiring manager and I would ask the new employee coming in, we're not going to set goals until the employee has had 4 weeks to be in the environment. I want the employee to come into the environment and see what works, see what doesn't work, see where they can apply their talents, see what it is that they can bring in terms of their own signature into the organization to help improve the organization. Everybody loved that process. So I would then, 4 weeks from now, sit down with the hiring manager and with the employee, the new hire, and we would collaboratively talk about what their ideas were, because the hiring manager would have to do the same thing. 95% of the time, what the employee saw as goals was exactly the same as what the manager saw as goals. Because they both see the same things that need to be done. They both see the same talents that the individual has. So when they come to the table, oftentimes what this individual says I'd like to work on and what this individual says I'd like you to work on are almost right in sync with each other. But how much more ownership will that individual have in establishing and achieving those goals? Way more ownership, way more buy-in, and much more successful with trying to achieve them because it aligns to their talents, because they were part of the decision-making process, they were part of what formulated those goals. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. So, now I say make SMART goals. How many SMART is specific? So a goal is to be specific. It's measurable, so how do we measure achievement of a goal? It's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time-based. So there's got a deadline to it. As long as you're putting goals down, if they're not SMART, it's better to have goals at least. If you make them SMART, that's even better. So I put same individual that I was talking about before, the stylist. So she's relatively new, as I was saying before. So identify and implement 3 new Instagram initiatives because she's really good at social media. She loves social media. She loves posting the pictures of the styles that she does and everything else like that. And she's got a good following and everything else like that. And we have our own social media that I don't want to even touch because I will screw it up. I will break it. So identify and implement 3 new Instagram strategies that help us to attract new clients through social media, right? Tap into what they love and what they like doing. Develop 3 new salon front experiences. So our salons are in the Walmart, so it's about our most direct opportunity for people is as they're walking into Walmart. So what we're doing in the front of our salon is what we can help to attract walk-ins. So develop 3 new salon front experiences, because that's part of how we're going to generate business, right? And then the third one was create an end-of-day cleaning schedule checklist to coach the other stylists on using it. It was something that needed to be done because our stylists would always fight over who had to do what and end up things that didn't get done because, you know, well, that's not my job and all that stuff. So this person's highly organized, high attention to detail. They like to create checklists. They like to use their own checklists. So create me a checklist, right? So relatively easy. Yes.
What did you put in the status box? The status
Oh,
box.
the status box is essentially where they're at. So it might be that they're in progress with it. It might be that it's already done. It might be that it's working. One of the great things about any type of plan, and this is a plan just like any other type of plan, is that it needs flexibility. And as we move into the last part, which we're going to have to hurry up, it's all about how we're working towards it along the way, how we're coaching it and supporting it and things like that. So this becomes a living thing. Individual development, and we're going to go through this very quickly, but this is essentially how am I helping you and how are you helping yourself grow and become better and develop the skills that you need to have. The easiest way to look at this is look at where they are in their tenure in the role. If they're new to the job, focus the development things on how do they learn their job better. So on-the-job training and skills. If they've been in the job for a while, then it's more specific skills training and on-the-job training that strengthens their areas that need to be greater. So you've been in the job for a while and everything else like that. You're really strong behind the chair. You're really strong with the stylist experience and stuff like that. But when our older clients come in and they want perms, you have no interest in perms and you don't do them very well. But it's still an important part of our business. So that's really where I want you to focus on. And that's probably what they'll say. I know I'm not really good at perms, so I can't take those older clients and stuff like that because I'm not very good at it. Proficient in current role. So if they're proficient in their current role, then their development plan should be reflective of how do we take you to the next level. What do you want to learn in terms of leadership, maybe? What do you want to learn in terms of salon management? So if you look at it from where they are at in their tenure within their role, it's easy to identify with what is the development plan that will help them be successful. Individual development example. So, and again, this individual is relatively new, just fresh out of salon school. So attend training on 2020 latest women's trends. That's something that all stylists should always be on the forefront with. They should be taking that all the time because what it does is it keeps them up to date in terms of how they can service the latest styles and everything like that. Attend training, so even if this person was there for a year, 5 years, whatever, that's an important one. Men's trends is not so important. Attend training on layering techniques. That was something that she needs to strengthen her skill set in. And she identified it that. And then watch video tutorials on creating the best salon experience. So that is the customer experience side. Because we want her to demonstrate the customer experience that we want within our particular salon. So we want her to follow what we call the 5 steps. Okay? So overall, what do you think about that approach to performance development? Takes a half an hour maximum to prepare for that. Just preparing your ideas and your bullet points. Takes less than an hour to have the conversation. So let's imagine that 4 out of 5 of your team achieve those goals. What kind of impact does that have? Success. It's fantastic. Like if you had 4 out of 5 that achieve those goals, you're looking at an exceptional year. But we don't do it. Now, we can set great goals, but if they become static and they sit there for a year, 4 out of 5 are not going to achieve them. If it wasn't a collaborative process, and we just told them what we needed them to do, they're not going to achieve them. So in reality, it doesn't work oftentimes, how we do it. So hopefully, this first part goes, oh yeah, there's an easy button. I can make that happen. Now the next part, takes it from being a forgotten document to being a living, breathing entity between you and the individual. It's great to have a plan, but now let's support the plan. Coaching. Now there's 2 different ways of coaching. There's formal coaching in terms of performance development process, and then there's informal coaching. Informal coaching would be like what we were talking about earlier. That individual that you're talking about, that's something that I would be mentoring somebody about. That's something that I would be doing immediate and as often as necessary to help that person evolve. If I put it into a monthly performance development conversation, A, they will not look forward to that conversation. And I want them looking forward to every one of those conversations. B is that when it comes to behavioral things, it has to be immediate. When you see the issue that arises or whatever, talk to them about it at that time. Not give them shit about it at that time, but talk to them about it at the time. Sometimes you can just set up a little signal that, you know, oh, you're starting to go off the rails. And he sees you do that, and that's your silent way of being able to bring him back to that conversation that we had before. So the informal conversations are conversations that are absolutely as valuable as the formal ones. But we're going to talk about the formal ones for now. So this looks complicated. Well, now it looks even more complicated. But it's not, okay? And it's, January through to December, it doesn't matter whether, you know, your cycle is whatever, okay? It's essentially do that planning piece, which is what we just talked about. Half an hour, each of you taking time to kind of think through those three areas. And then less than an hour to have that conversation. Come up with a plan. So that's what you do here. What you do all the way through the rest of the year is you support the plan. You support the individual. And you support the success. So, we talked about this here. So, this is, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself then, or once getting ahead of myself. So this is basically when we're setting the goal setting, okay? So, who? Both you and the team member, no more than 30 minutes, and preparation. So that's, you come with your ideas, I'll come with my ideas, okay? Just come up with bullet points around your key performance targets, and come up with what's your conversation around past performance. Because in that transition, like when you first do it, you're just talking about what's your goals going forward. When you're doing it at the end of the year, even though you've coached all the way through, you still formally go and talk about the year in review. But now talking about the year in review becomes a very different conversation because you've talked about it all the way throughout the year. So review, have a conversation about the past year, what were successes, barriers, and everything else like that. And because you've had a coaching conversation with them each month about this piece of paper, there's no surprises or anything else like that. It's not a bad conversation at that point. Recognize, show appreciation for successes and discuss areas for improvement. That starts to get you thinking in terms of future. Performance development should be future focused. If you're focused on the past, which most performance review processes are, it is not motivating them for performance improvement or developmental improvement. It becomes a confrontational conversation. Plan, have a conversation about new goals, targets, their ideas. So where's the alignment to what we want to achieve? So your alignment between your thinking and my thinking. Do they align to the person's strengths? So do these targets and goals align to your strengths? So, and are they stretched but not too stretched? If you make them unattainable, they become demotivating. So you want to make sure that goals and KPIs and so on and so forth are things that are going to stretch them but not beyond their capacity. And follow-up dates. So, key. At the end of that conversation, so we've now set our goals, we've set our KPIs, we've set our development plan, collaboratively. Put in your calendars, and I cannot emphasize this enough, put in your calendars a monthly recurring 15-minute meeting with that individual. Because this is where it becomes a living, breathing entity. Don't schedule over those meetings. So this is the monthly coaching meetings. So don't schedule over these meetings. These meetings are important. So oftentimes, the problem with this is that we go in with great intention, but then it's like, oh, you know what, I had a client meeting that's going to come up that morning and everything else is bad. Can we reschedule? And you just talk about it over, over the water cooler and stuff like that. Oh yeah, well let's do it Wednesday instead. Well, Wednesday comes and goes and it doesn't happen and stuff like that. then what happens is that you have the next one that comes up, and because we already missed that last one, I've got something else that's going. Very quickly it becomes crowded out. If you let it get crowded out, then you're doing a disservice to your organization or to your team and to your success. So, the PDP, Performance Development Plan, this becomes the centerpiece of the conversation. So you physically take out their PDP before that 15-minute conversation, just to reflect on, so what is it that we agreed to? Because that becomes a centerpiece on the coffee table in between, that you then are just having a good conversation about. How are you doing? Collaborative discussion about their progress so far. So just talk about it. So how are you doing? How was this month? I have my plan there, right? I see where their KPIs are, so that individual. So if you're really knocking it out of the park here and here, underperforming a little bit here, but it's okay because you're just new and everything else like that. That's something that we're going to work on over the next month. Does that make sense? It's about a conversation. It's about a conversation. How are you doing? The best way to have great conversations is not to provide answers, it's to have great questions. Great questions, engage them in the conversation. Make the conversations about them and about what's important to them. And drive them to think and to own. So how are you doing? What has been successful? Are you experiencing any barriers? Is there anything that you need for support? And then, what's going to be our focus next month? Yeah, it's now not me telling them. It's us coming up with it together. Could you imagine if you had this type of conversation once a month? Is that a conversation you need to hide from because it's going to be confrontational? Isn't that a great conversation to have? And what do you think the impact of those conversations will have on your business or on your organization or on your not-for-profit or on the community? A good conversation is like a miniskirt. Short enough to retain interest, but long enough to cover something. Two pieces of advice. I advise that the performance development process and all of these conversations, you do not include the compensation adjustment conversation. Separate that conversation. You want this PDP process and conversations to be focused on the two of us and how we progress forward together and how we work together towards success. I guarantee you, if you keep this one as a separate one, that becomes a great conversation as well. Because you want to reward them, because you have created this performance cycle. Corrective feedback, never talk about corrective feedback in these sessions, because if you talk about corrective feedback in these sessions, then people will start to not be looking forward to these sessions. They should be done separately as a feedback discussion. And I got a brief thing that was going right here. So with feedback, and I'm just going to do this one real quick. With feedback, it should always be done immediately. Corrective feedback should always be done immediately. And not to compare employees to dogs or anything else like that, but Pavlov's law is applicable to us as, so if I'm not performing in my tasks properly, as an example, and you as the manager walk by and it's like, oh, just turn that wrong again. And then the next time you walk by, still doing it the wrong way. But you don't say anything. And then you get frustrated, and then you come up and you, because you're frustrated with them now. Because now it's an emotional conversation. Whereas if I would have just sat down with them briefly at that moment in time and said, so I noticed that you're doing it this way and everything else. The reason why we do it that way is because of this, this, and this. But if you did that immediately, A, it's not an offensive conversation. And B, you're getting them into new habits before habits form. Because once a habit forms, it's hard to break that habit. So if this is the way you let me do it for the last month, then expect it. I'm gonna keep doing it that way for the following month. So correct immediate and often as necessary. Be specific. Again, it should be a conversation, but now it's an ad hoc conversation. Follow up for accountability and coaches. So follow up. So, because it's the follow-up that we don't do, and it's the follow-up that creates the most value. And that's actually the monthly coaching sessions is all about the follow-up. And lead by example. If I'm going to ask somebody to do a certain thing a certain way, or if I'm going to ask them to behave a certain way in my environment, then I damn well better do the same. So, overall, this process will take approximately 7.5 hours per person throughout the year. Is that worthy of your time? We don't have time now, but I want you to think about what are the benefits of doing a program like this. And I want you to think, do you still see that the barriers that we talked about before, are they still barriers in your mind? After we've just talked about this. And I'm just by show of hands. We talked about the barriers to doing performance. Do you still think the same way as when we first started? Not a rhetorical question. But we're done, so I guess. Thanks very much.